All right, welcome. In this video, we're going to learn how to set up your computer in order to be able to write Python programs. So there's actually a few steps that we're going to have to take in order to do that. The first thing that we need to do is install Python. This is an interpreter, which is going to take our plain language English, our high-level programming language, and it's going to convert it down into something that the computer can understand. We've talked about the fact that the computers run on ones and zeros, but I don't write my programs in ones and zeros. And so I need an interpreter that will take my high-level language and convert it down into something the machine understands. The next thing that we need to do is to install an IDE, Integrated Developers Environment. And that's just a tool that I can use to write the program itself. It includes a text editor, and it also includes that interpreter as well, and then a run environment. So I can write the code, and then I can run it and see what happens. I can debug it to find any of my errors. You can use any IDE that you would like to, but for our purposes, we're going to be using VS Code. Now, when I install VS Code, it doesn't include the ability to write in Python. VS Code is a very robust IDE, and you can write in a variety of different languages. All you have to do is add extensions. And so we are going to configure our VS Code in order to be able to write Python programs. So we're going to have to add the extension. And then finally, we're going to create our first program to give you a look at what Python looks like. So the first step is to search for Python. You can just go into any kind of a browser and type in download Python. When I did it, the very first thing that it brought back was python.org. And so I clicked on the download Python, and you're going to notice in my list that it shows it for a variety of different operating systems. So when I go to that download Python page, I can see that the download is available for different operating systems. You're going to want to make sure that you choose the operating system for your particular machine, because it's going to include required elements for your platform or your operating system. So I have a Windows machine. I clicked on the Windows download. I went into my downloads directory and I found the installer. And when I clicked on the installer, or the executable file to install it, this is what came up. So what I'm going to want to do is install now. I can tell it where I would like to put it, or we'll just install it now. And this is going to add all the necessary components for my Windows-based machine. I can see that it's going to start the process of installing it onto my machine. And then once it's done, I'm going to get this screen that tells me that it is done. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is search for VS Code, Visual Studio Code. So I just did a search in a browser for download VS Code, and it also took me to a variety of options, and the first one seemed to be code.visualstudio.com download. So when I clicked on that link, it also has the ability to download Visual Studio Code for a variety of different operating systems. Again, you're going to want to make sure that you're selecting the correct download for your operating system. So again, I have a Windows machine, so I chose the Windows 10, 11, and I clicked on the x64, just clicked on that download, and it brought me to this page. Thanks for downloading it. And the next thing that I'm going to do is go into my downloads directory or find that downloaded file. I'm going to click on it, and it's going to bring up this setup. So on this screen, you'll notice down at the bottom it says, I accept the agreement or I do not accept the agreement. You're going to want to accept the agreement in order to be able to install this. All they want is your firstborn child and your first $100,000 in pay. I'm joking. All right, so I'm going to install it. And then you have some options in the install to create a desktop icon. So I check that flag, and it'll put a VS Code icon on my desktop. And notice the two at the bottom, register code as an editor for supported file types. So this would make VS Code the default program that would open up any of those supported file types, and then adding it to the path. So I made sure that those were checked. If you don't want to register it, if you have other IDEs that you would like to use for other file types, then you can uncheck that second one to the bottom. So once I clicked next, it took me to a screen telling me that it's ready to install with some of the details about my installation choices, and then I click the install button down on the bottom right hand side of the screen, and it begins the process of installing the software. Of course, once it's done, it's going to tell me that it's done. If the box is checked to launch Video Studio for the first time, that's what it's going to do. VS Code, it will launch it. Otherwise, you can just go find where you installed it and on your desktop, if you put a link there, and we can open it. So I'm going to create a second video that talks about how to open and configure VS Code to run with Python.